There's a type of person who drops a curse word in almost every sentence. At work, with their parents, mid-laugh, mid-cry, and everyone around them assumes the same thing. That they're crude, that they lack vocabulary, that they never learned better. And here's what nobody tells you. According to psychology and neuroscience, people who curse a lot are frequently smarter, more emotionally honest, and more trustworthy than the people judging them for it. Stick with me, because by the end of this, you're going to look at your foul-mouthed friend completely differently. Let's start with the obvious question. Why does society treat swearing like a character flaw? For centuries, curse words have been labeled as low language, the vocabulary of the uneducated, the unrefined, the undisciplined. Parents scold it out of children. Schools punish it. Professional environments treat it as unpolished. There's this deeply embedded assumption that if you had a bigger vocabulary, you simply wouldn't need to curse. But here's where it gets interesting, because researchers actually tested that assumption directly. A study conducted by psychologists Kristen and Timothy J. had participants generate as many curse words as they could in 1 minute, then compared that to their overall verbal fluency using standard vocabulary tests. The finding completely upended the stereotype. People who could generate more curse words also tended to have larger general vocabularies overall. Swearing wasn't a substitute for verbal skill. It was actually one more category sitting on top of an already rich vocabulary. Researchers even coined a name for the phenomenon: taboo fluency. The idea that swearing well is its own linguistic skill, requiring nuance, timing, and creativity, not the absence of it. Here's what's actually happening in the brain when someone curses. Curse words are processed differently than regular language. Most vocabulary lives in the left hemisphere, in structured, grammar-based language centers. But swear words are stored more in the brain's limbic system, the emotional core of the brain, alongside the amygdala. That's why people who lose the ability to speak after certain types of strokes, a condition called aphasia, can sometimes still curse fluently, even when they can't form regular sentences anymore. Curse words aren't really words in the traditional sense. They're closer to emotional flares, wired directly into the parts of the brain that handle raw feeling, not polished grammar. And that's precisely why they work the way they do. When you stub your toe and a curse word flies out before you've even consciously decided to say anything, that's not a vocabulary failure. That's your limbic system firing faster than your rational language centers can catch up. Which brings us to one of the most fascinating findings in this entire area of research: pain tolerance. A now famous study out of Keele University had participants submerge their hand in ice water, once while repeating a neutral word, and once while repeating a curse word. Across the board, people were able to keep their hand in the ice water significantly longer and reported less perceived pain when they were allowed to swear. Researchers believe this happens because swearing triggers a mild stress response, a small spike in heart rate and adrenaline, which activates a natural pain-dampening reaction called stress-induced analgesia. In plain terms, cursing doesn't just express pain, it biologically reduces it. Now let's talk about the emotional honesty piece, because this is where the psychology gets really interesting. People who curse frequently tend to score lower on measures of what psychologists call impression management, the tendency to constantly filter yourself to look good in front of others. That doesn't mean they don't care what people think. It means they've decided that performing constant politeness costs more than it's worth. And here's the twist researchers keep finding. Because they're not spending energy sanitizing every sentence, people who curse comfortably often come across as more authentic. And studies on interpersonal trust have found that mild, appropriately timed swearing can actually increase perceived honesty in a speaker, because the audience reads it as, "This person isn't performing for me, they're just telling me the truth." Think about that. The exact behavior that gets read as unprofessional in a boardroom is the same. Behavior that, in a conversation between friends, makes someone feel more real, more trustworthy, less like they're managing you. Here's the part that explains why this pattern often starts young and sticks around. For a lot of people, swearing became a bonding tool. Curse words strip away formality instantly. They signal, "You don't need to perform politeness with me, we're past that." Linguists call this a marker of in-group solidarity. Among close friends, cursing frequently isn't rudeness, it's a form of intimacy, a shorthand that says, "I trust you enough to not filter myself in front of you." That's a big reason why people often curse far more around the people they're closest to, and far less around strangers or authority figures. It's not inconsistency, it's a precise social calibration tool, and the people who curse a lot tend to be remarkably good at reading exactly which environment allows for it. But let's be honest about the exceptions, because there's a real distinction worth naming here. There's a difference between cursing as emotional expression and cursing as aggression. Psychologists differentiate between what's called cathartic swearing, cursing that releases tension without targeting anyone, and hostile swearing, cursing deployed specifically to demean or intimidate someone else. The first is a pressure valve, the second is a weapon. Both use the same words, but the function and the impact on the people around you are completely different. So here's the real question worth asking yourself. When you curse, is it releasing something, or is it aimed at someone? If it's the first, you're using language the way linguists have found most people naturally do, as an outlet for intensity. If it's the second, that's worth examining. Not because the words themselves are the problem, but because the intent behind them is doing something the words alone can't fix. But let's get back to the people who curse constantly and comfortably, because there's something worth respecting in that. Research on emotional suppression has consistently found that people who bottle up frustration, who force themselves to always sound composed, tend to carry higher baseline stress levels over time. Constantly filtering your language is, in a small but real way, constant self-monitoring. And constant self-monitoring is exhausting. People who let curse words fly freely are, in a strange way, giving their nervous system less to manage. They're not spending bandwidth translating every raw feeling into a polished, HR-approved sentence. The feeling comes out close to how it actually felt, and that takes less internal effort to sustain over an entire day. There's also a cultural layer worth mentioning, because different societies treat this completely differently. In parts of Australia, casual swearing is so normalized that its near total absence would actually seem cold or standoffish. In much of the American South, the exact same words carry far more social weight and are treated as genuinely inappropriate outside specific contexts. So even the correct amount of cursing isn't universal. It's entirely shaped by the environment someone was raised in, which means the same behavior that gets one person labeled classless in one culture gets another person labeled perfectly normal in another. Let's zoom out for a second, because this connects to something bigger about how we judge language in general. We tend to associate restraint with intelligence and expressiveness with a lack of control. But researchers keep finding the opposite pattern when it comes to swearing specifically. It requires linguistic dexterity to know exactly which word lands in exactly which moment for exactly the right effect. Comedians, writers, and some of history's sharpest communicators have used precisely placed profanity as a tool, not a crutch, because timing a curse word correctly is genuinely difficult to do well. Anyone can recite a formal sentence. Landing the perfect curse word at exactly the right moment takes an ear for language most people don't actually have. So what does this mean for you? If you're someone who curses a lot, here's your permission slip. You're not uneducated. You're not out of control. You likely have a rich vocabulary running underneath language that simply refuses to sanitize itself for other people's comfort. Your brain is accessing the emotional shortcut it was built to use, the same shortcut every human brain has. You're just less interested than most in hiding it. That's not a deficiency. In a world full of people constantly performing composure, it might be one of the most honest things about you. The next time someone tells you to watch your language like it proves something about your character, you can tell them about taboo fluency, about stress-induced analgesia, about a limbic system that processes curse words as raw feeling instead of grammar. Or you can just shrug and say, "I curse because I mean exactly what I say." That usually ends the conversation pretty quickly. If this explains something about yourself you never had the words for, subscribe to Psychology of You for more deep and personal videos.